Hi, welcome to another Tip Tuesday. My name is Ben Sykes. I'm a developer here at IndySoft, and today I thought we'd look at our config changes and locks utility. So the problem that we would be solving here is just keeping organized with all the different changes you could make to various configuration items in the system. There is a lot you can change in IndySoft. Event configuration, reports, layouts, various scripts in the system. Especially if you've got more than one person that's working on these various changes, it can be a lot to keep track of. Especially once you get rolled out into production. If you make a change, it's very important that you know exactly who made the change so you know who to blame. And if the change doesn't go as intended, that you know you've got a place you can go back and quickly revert to a prior change in the system. And then also the second part that we would be looking at here is if you have multiple people working on the configuration together, then how do you make sure that if one person pulls up a particular report that another person doesn't pull up the exact same report at the same time, both trying to modify it. That can be confusing. And so this config changes and locking utility helps us in both of those regards. So to make this visible from the main screen, what you could do is just add a hyperlink to the config changes and locks utility. So you would only want to do this on a layout that would be visible to admins in the system most likely, but you have that just like that option just like any other link in the system. So all I did there is I edited the home layout. I'm logged in as an admin right now, so I can do that. I just added an extra line to my side layout, and I pointed it to this config changes hyperlink. So that launches the config changes utility. So typically this would be an admin that would get into this screen. There's a lot that can go on here. Just keep in mind any of the functionality that you see here. There's probably an option on this third tab to turn it off. So if you don't like some of the prompts that we'll see for the comments or the locking mechanism, these kinds of things, you can probably go over here if you're a system admin and turn off that functionality or slightly tweak it. We'll look at that at the end. But mainly this is just keeping track of all the different changes that are made. Each time a change is made, you'll see it listed in the grid on the right. Or if somebody pulls up a particular report or an event to start working on it, then a lock's going to be created. As long as that item is up on screen and they're working on it, you'll see a lock here in this grid, and as soon as they close that item and stop working on it, the lock is removed. So a simple concept, but it's very, very powerful in the system. So as you might expect, this is just a listing of changes that have been made historically that's shown on the right, and you can filter it on the left-hand side. So if you're only interested maybe in changes related to event configuration, you could unselect them all and just show those, or just changes to layouts, that type of thing. You can have a date filter. So if you know something went off the rails last week around Tuesday, you can quickly filter in and see those changes with the date ranges on the top, or you can target it to a particular user. So keep in mind, this is making a log not just of an audit trail of the different changes that are made in Print Builder and Layout Builder and event configuration, etc. But it's also taking a snapshot of that configuration each time it's saved into the system. So we take a snapshot of it, we put it into the database, and that gives you a save point that you can go back to and revert in the future if you need. So let's turn all these back on here and just jump into a real example. So let's pull up Print Builder and let's look at our standard certificate here. So this is our standard certificate. Maybe we go in here and we notice I don't like that title in bold. So whenever you make any save of a report or any configuration item in the system, assuming you have the default options turned on for the settings of this config changes module, then it will prompt you that you have to add in a note describing this particular change. So we'll just say made the title non-bold. So that's saving it into this config changes utility with that note, and it takes a snapshot of that item. So if I press F5 here to refresh, then you can see it's now listed here, and it'll automatically refresh every few minutes there. So now other people can be reminded that I was the one that made that tremendous change into that particular template. So say we come back in here in a few days and all of the end users revolt and they hate it that it's not bold here for the title, then we know who to blame, who to make that change, and there's a quick way to revert it also, rather than having to modify it. So say we go in here and let's make another change, and let's say this ABC company here is just a label that's hard-coded. So let's change this to BCD company. So I'm just illustrating a couple different save points that we would have in the config changes utility. So now we've got a couple of these listed here. So if we pull it up, we've got the non-bold here, and that's BCD company. So now let's try to revert back to the moment when we saved just with this, the non-bold label here. So we can go back to that save point that we've got in the system and say, let's revert. So the hint for this last button is for reverting to that revision. So it'll revert the currently selected revision to be current in the database, and the updated configuration will then be backed up as a new archive. So we'll get two changes here. This is the import of the previous change that we had saved, and this is a note that we reverted from revision number 1. So it made the title non-bold. So this place where we were in the past configuration is now where we are again. So if we go back to Print Builder and pull this up, now we're back to ABC Company. So it's just a way to keep you honest and log all the different changes that are made into the system. So these config changes will automatically be logged whenever you change anything in Print Builder. Any of the template types that you see here, whenever you press the save button, you're automatically prompted to make a note of that change. Also applies to anything in Layout Builder, and that includes any of the flowcharts that are here. Like if I go into the search by equipment layout here, and I try to add the word test here, then I'm prompted to make a note of that change, and that's going to appear here logged under the screen layouts in flowcharts. So several different things you can do here besides just filtering and seeing the changes or reverting to past revisions. You can export these. The way that we're saving this behind the scenes, the format that we're using for each of these configuration items is the same as you would have in the export-import system if you ran that and targeted specifically just to one of these configuration lines. So you could export that maybe past revision off to a zip file, and that can be really handy, especially if you've got maybe multiple databases. So you have a production system and then a dev system, a test system. If you want to take just a few of the templates that you've been trying to tweak in Print Builder and move those over from dev into test, this is a great way for you to do that. You can target these particular changes, export them here, then just pull them up and import them using the export-import system. So that's the Changes tab. So the different functionality that we saw there, just keep in mind that you could tweak this if you are a system administrator. You could go in here and say, do you want to prompt for a comment whenever you do a save? This category here. So if you don't want to bother doing that, you can quickly turn that off for each of the different types of configuration in the system. A couple options here related to locking we'll look at in a second. And then there's just an option for do you want to archive the changes whenever you make a change. So if you don't want to take a snapshot of everything and you like living on the edge there, you could turn that off in the system. And then do you want to require a comment whenever you do it. So there's an option for whether you prompt for the comment, and then if you prompt for it, is the comment optional or is it required? So that can be saved for each of the different types. So that's the changes side. Now the locks work probably as you might expect. See, you can see here I have the layout editor pulled up on screen, and I'm editing the equipment layout named search by. So if I refresh the screen here, you can see that's why I have currently a lock for this search by equipment layout. But as soon as I close this out and refresh, that lock has been removed. So we're just making sure that no two people are working on the exact same thing at the same time. So if you have one of these locks currently active in the system, then what will happen here, and this is a little bit difficult for me to demonstrate just on one workstation, but say someone else from a different workstation tried to pull up this exact search by equipment layout and do a modification. If that happened, they would receive a prompt on screen that says, Ben already has this layout locked. Would you like to automatically send an email to Ben requesting access? So assuming Ben has an email address set up in the system, there's a quick email that can be sent out saying, I want to work on this screen layout, please check it back in. So that's the option that would happen automatically, or you could force the same. If you're an admin here, you could go log into this utility and press this email button also. If for whatever reason a lock gets into the system and you need to force that lock to be removed, maybe somebody's computer crashed right when they were working on something, anything along those lines, then just go in here and press this button here to inactivate the selected lock, or you could also just completely delete that also. So from the left-hand side here, you can filter to just see active locks, inactive locks, or all locks. So this locking mechanism, the locks only stay active as long as you have the item up currently on screen, but we still retain a log of that lock for historical reasons. So you can get a sense of which person is continually pulling up something and making edits into the system. That's the difference between inactivating a lock or completely deleting it. So same categories are listed here on the left. So in relation to the locks, you've got some options here that you could play around with as a system admin. Do you want to prompt for a comment whenever you lock? Do you want to prompt to retain a lock? And then do you want to use locking at all? If you decide for a few of these categories you don't need that at all, then just feel free to turn it off here. So I think that's about it. Keep in mind there's a couple additional options. There are other options that you would have in the profile manager that are related to the changes and locks. So the settings tab here applies to the functionality of the system across the entire database. But there are a few of these settings that are profile specific. So if we go into Profile Manager here, then if you go to any of the profiles, go down under Config Changes Utility, then per profile you can decide whether this particular user should be blocked from the Config Changes utility at all, so they wouldn't be able to see or launch that utility. Or if they get into the utility, do you want to allow them to inactivate any of the existing locks or delete the locks, or allow them to delete or revert any of the changes? So I think that just about covers it. That's the Config Changes and Locks utility. I hope you guys have a great week. Thanks.